I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to make a prediction. Could be wrong, but I'm going to make a prediction that there's going to be a good amount of people who are going to have problems upgrading their NVMe SSD in their PlayStation 5. This is just going to be a recipe for disaster. Let's get into it. Skip it up and that up. Hey everybody, if you're new to this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and also hit the bell to get notifications of all my newest uploads so you could see me complain about things and talk to a porcelain bird almost on a daily basis. Doesn't that sound like fun? Yes, it does. Subscribe now, please. So we know the PlayStation 5 took a different approach than Microsoft's approach for adding more storage for next-gen games. And now if you want to put previous generation games from the Xbox One or before on the Series X, you could just put them on regular USB external storage if you want to. It could even be a mechanical drive. But if you want to play 9th gen games, you either have to use the proprietary storage that Microsoft has, or as of now, technically, granted they're rolling out beta updates to let people experiment with the PCIe NVMe slot on their PlayStation 5s, you can't expand the storage yet. You can transfer your games off to an external drive, but if you want to play 9th gen games on your PS5, you have to dump them back on the internal storage, and the NVMe slot in the PlayStation 5 is still technically disabled. It's not officially supported yet. Well, good news. There's finally drives out there from Seagate that are compatible with the PlayStation 5. But here's the problem, is that it's pretty damn specific as to what kind of drive you're going to have to get for your PlayStation 5. Whereas Microsoft, they're like, hey, here's these proprietary SSD cards that we're making. You know they meet the specs because it's proprietary for the Series S and Series X. You're good to go. Here, Sony is expecting soccer moms to follow these specifications. Anyway, this comes from VGC or VideoGamesChronicle.com. I'll read it to you, then we'll discuss. The Seagate FireCuda 530 NVMe M.2 PCIe Gen 4 SSD, that just rolls right off the tongue, offers read speeds of up to 7,300 megabytes a second, meaning it easily meets Sony's 5,500 megabytes per second requirements. The FireCuda 530 with a heatsink attached will cost $169 for 500 gigabytes, $274 for 1 terabyte, $570 for 2 terabytes, and $1,050 for 4 terabytes. Sony said on Thursday that it will soon be rolling out the ability for beta users to expand the PS5 storage with an off-the-shelf M.2 SSD. Speaking to Finder, Seagate's country manager for Australia and New Zealand, Jeff Park, confirmed that the FireCuda 530 would work inside the PS5. We have done some testing with Sony on the PlayStation 5, and today we can confirm that the FireCuda 530 with the heatsink has met all the PS5 requirements, he stated. With the PS5 design, the SSD card slot is very narrow, so there's not much room for the SSD to mount. However, with the FireCuda 530, even with the heatsink on top, the slim design allows for it to fit. However, Sony stressed in its recently posted support page that anyone installing an internal SSD will need to attach their own cooling structure, such as a heatsink, and that the whole structure will need to fit within 110 by 25 by 11.25 millimeter space. And then here we could see all of the requirements that are needed for the Sony's NVMe PCIe 4.2 M.2 SSD. What you get my point. The NVMe slot, the drive, that these are the specs that are required for it, okay? The interface needs to be a PCIe Gen 4 X4 M.2 NVMe SSD. Capacity is 250 gigabytes to 4 terabytes. The cooling structure using an M.2 SSD with your PS5 console requires effective heat dissipation with a cooling structure such as a heatsink. You can attach one to your M.2 SSD yourself, either in a single-sided format or double-sided format. There are also M.2 SSDs that have cooling structures such as heatsinks built in, and it goes over all the other stuff again, the length, the width, the height. Okay. Now, for the majority of you that are watching this isn't going to be a big deal. I know to look out for these specifications and requirements. Most of you probably know to look out for these specifications and requirements. But do you think that I know people in real life that were dying to get their hands on a PS5, got their hands on a PS5, are going to want to upgrade their storage, and I guarantee you they are not going to look at any of these specifications. They are going to go into a Best Buy. They're like, oh, the update for the PS5 is out. I could add more storage. Oh, wow, that's the cheapest $99 PCIe NVMe M.2 SSD. Sign me up. They're going to go home and it ain't going to work and they're going to have no idea why. Or their system is going to crash and they're going to have no idea why. Or even if they buy a drive with the right I/O speeds, they're not going to look out if it has a heatsink. And then it's going to overheat and cause problems in their console or maybe break the console. Or they're going to go buy one with a heatsink and it's not going to fit because it requires a slimmer heatsink. Do you think that Karen, the soccer mom, is going to look for all this? Or not even just like a mom looking for it for her son or daughter? Do you think that Bob, the frat guy, is going to, bro, I need more storage. I want as much. Oh, it takes 4 terabytes. That's $100 drive from some Chinese knockoff M.2 NVMe company. I'm buying it, bro. Oh my God, my PS5 is smoking, bro. What am I going to do? What's wrong with this? I thought they said I could expand the storage. No one who is in those demographics, like the people who just want to play in a console, who aren't tech savvy, are not going to know any of this. They're not going to know to look for any of this. They're just going to think, okay, the drive, I can expand it. They're going to put it in there and wonder why they're having problems. At first, I was like, look, I like Sony's approach. They're giving you flexibility. And then I was like, oh, I like Microsoft's approach because they're making sure the compatibility will be there, even though it uses proprietary high-speed storage add-ons. But now, hindsight being 2020 and seeing how confusing this is going to be for the average consumer, Microsoft definitely had the right approach, and Sony has the awful approach, and it's probably going to cause problems for people. Because look, man, before I end the video, I wanted to make this point. I was thinking of it before. I remember working at these stores, and to this day, it's like, I know people are like, oh man, I bought this USB-C cable. It's not working with my hard drive. I don't get it. My external hard drive. I'm like, where'd you get it? From the dollar store? What did you expect? You got a dollar cable. You got a dollar USB-C cable that it's not designed. It's probably not designed to do anything. It's probably just designed for charging, and it probably barely does that. And you're expecting it to transfer data, high bandwidth data, to your external hard drive. These are the people that are going to they're going to want to buy the cheapest drive, not look at any of the requirements that Sony says you need for these hard drives. And they're not, and I know what people are going to say, Rich, they're probably going to slap a sticker on the box, but still people are not, they're just going to go in there, I need an NVMe. They may not even tell the Best Buy employee, for example, they're going in there for a PS5 NVMe SSD. They're not even going to, they're like, I just need a high storage PCIe M.2 SSD. The person at Best Buy is going to do their job, not knowing that they need it for their PlayStation 5. Be like, hey, okay, that 2 terabytes for $200 or whatever, sign me up. And they're going to go home, and then they're going to be mad because it doesn't work right in their PS5, even though they didn't tell the salesperson they wanted it for their PS5. So fine, I'm sure they're going to have stickers that say PS5 compatible, but I guarantee you people aren't going to look for them. So, look, all I could tell you is, you guys out there, I know 99% of my audience, just make sure you pay attention and make sure the drive is compatible, make sure the M.2 has a heatsink, and make sure the heatsink is slim enough to fit inside the PlayStation 5, because not all M.2s, even if they have the right read and write speeds that the PlayStation 5 requires, the heatsink might be too thick. Just keep that all in mind. Keep that all in mind. I don't think this was the right approach, Sony. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one.